Germany built some of the most feared tanks in military history. Machines with armor so thick that enemy shells bounced off like pebbles. Guns so powerful they could pierce steel from kilometers away. Engineering so advanced that Allied tank crews dreaded the sound of their engines. But these technological marvels shared a fatal flaw. They were so expensive, so complex, and so difficult to produce that Germany could never build enough of them to change the outcome of the war. While a single Tiger tank cost 250,700 Reichsmarks and required thousands of man-hours to assemble, the Soviets were stamping out T-34s at a rate that would ultimately produce 80,000 tanks. The Americans built 49,000 Shermans. Germany's most sophisticated tank, the Tiger I, numbered only 1,047 by the time production ended. This was the paradox at the heart of German tank warfare. Superior engineering confronted by the brutal mathematics of industrial production. Before we go deeper into how this decision changed the war forever, make sure to subscribe for more history that actually happened. The philosophy behind German tank design emerged from the lessons of World War I and the tactical theories developed during the interwar years. German military doctrine emphasized quality over quantity, technological superiority over mass production, and the decisive breakthrough over attrition warfare. The panzer divisions were conceived as elite striking forces, spearheads that would penetrate enemy lines and exploit weakness through speed and firepower. This vision required tanks that could dominate any opponent in direct combat. When German forces invaded Poland in 1939, then France in 1940, this doctrine appeared vindicated. The panzer divisions smashed through defensive positions with devastating efficiency. But the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 shattered these assumptions. German tankers encountered the T-34, a Soviet medium tank with sloped armor that deflected German shells and a 76.2 mm gun that could penetrate German armor. The T-34 was crude by German standards, uncomfortable for its crew, lacking in precision optics. But it was reliable, easy to manufacture, and produced in staggering numbers. This confrontation forced Germany to reconsider its approach. Rather than matching Soviet production capacity, German designers doubled down on technological superiority. They would build tanks so formidable that numerical disadvantage became irrelevant. This decision would define the character of every major German tank that followed. The Sturmgeschütz III was never intended to be a tank destroyer. Originally designed in the late 1930s as an infantry support vehicle, the Stuggy III mounted a short-barreled 75mm gun on a Panzer III chassis with no turret, keeping its profile low and its production costs down. But when Germany faced tank shortages on the Eastern Front, the Stuggy III was repurposed and upgraded with a long-barreled 75mm gun capable of penetrating enemy armor at range. Between 1940 and 1945, Germany produced approximately 10,086 Stuggy III assault guns, making it the most numerous German armored fighting vehicle of the war. The Stuggy III weighed 24 tons in its later variants, with frontal armor of 80 mm and a crew of 4. Its lack of a turret was both a limitation and an advantage. The vehicle could not traverse its gun quickly to engage targets on its flanks, making it vulnerable in close combat. But the low silhouette made it difficult to spot at distance, and the simplified design meant it could be produced faster and cheaper than turreted tanks. The Stuggy III became the workhorse of German defensive operations. Deployed in independent assault gun brigades and attached to infantry divisions, it served on every front from North Africa to the Arctic Circle. By the spring of 1944, Stuggy III units claimed to have destroyed or disabled 20,000 enemy tanks. This figure, while likely inflated by the fog of war and overclaiming, reflects the vehicle's ubiquity and effectiveness in defensive combat. The Stuggy III excelled in ambush tactics, firing from concealed positions along roads and tree lines then withdrawing before counterfire could locate it. Its reliability was superior to the heavier German tanks, and field repair crews could maintain it with available resources. The Stugge III did not inspire the same fear as the Tiger, but it killed more Allied tanks than any other German armored vehicle in the war. The Panzer IV was the only German tank to remain in continuous production and frontline service throughout the entire war. First entering service in 1939 as a medium tank designed to support the lighter Panzer III, the Panzer IV underwent constant evolution to meet the escalating demands of armored warfare. Early variants mounted a short-barreled 75mm gun intended for infantry support, with armor ranging from 8mm to 30mm, sufficient against light anti-tank weapons but vulnerable to anything heavier. The invasion of the Soviet Union exposed these limitations brutally. Panzer IV crews found themselves facing T-34s whose sloped armor shrugged off German shells while their 76.2mm guns punched through German armor with ease. The response came in 1942 with the Panzer IV AOS F-2, which mounted the long-barreled 75mm KWK-40 L-43 gun, later upgraded to the L-48 variant. This weapon could engage Soviet and American tanks at effective range. Frontal armor was progressively increased to 80mm with additional plates and side skirts added to protect against shaped charge weapons. By 1944, the Panzer IV had evolved into a formidable medium tank, balanced in firepower, armor, and mobility. Germany produced 8,553 Panzerfrees of all variants, making it the second most produced German armored vehicle after the Stugge III. The Panzer IV weighed approximately 25 tons in its final variants, powered by a Maybach HL 120 TRM engine, producing 300 horsepower, giving it a top speed of 42 km per hour on roads. Its crew of 5 could operate it for extended periods, and unlike the more complex Panthers and Tigers, the Panzer IV was mechanically reliable enough for sustained operations. It lacked the glamour of Germany's heavy tanks. It could not withstand hits from the most powerful Allied guns, and its own gun struggled against the frontal armor of Soviet heavy tanks and late-war American and British designs. But it remained in production until the final weeks of the war, serving on every front, in every theater, under every condition. The Panzer IV represented German pragmatism, a tank that balanced capability with producibility, performance with reliability. The Tiger Y was the tank that defined German armor in the public imagination. Entering service in August 1942, the Tiger Y was designed to be invincible. It weighed 54 tons, protected by armor ranging from 60mm on the hull sides to 100mm on the frontal hull and turret, with the gun mantlet varying between 120mm and 200mm. The main armament was the legendary 80mm KWK-36 L-56 gun, derived from the 80mm flak gun that had already proven devastating against tanks in North Africa and on the Eastern Front. This weapon could penetrate 100mm of armor at 2,000 meters, making it lethal to any Allied tank at ranges where return fire was ineffective. The Tiger's armor was thick enough that most Allied anti-tank guns could not penetrate it from the front at combat ranges. Crews who fought in Tigers often described a sense of near invulnerability, parking in the open and engaging enemy tanks with impunity. The psychological impact was immense. Allied tank crews learned to fear the Tiger's distinctive sound, the deep rumble of its Maybach HL 230P45 engine. Operational orders directed Allied units to avoid engaging Tigers head-on and to call for air support or artillery when Tigers were spotted. But the Tiger I was a weapon of profound contradictions. Its weight strained every mechanical component. The engine, originally designed for a lighter vehicle, was pushed beyond its limits. The gearbox and transmission were complex and prone to failure. The overlapping road wheel design, intended to distribute weight, collected mud and froze solid in winter, immobilizing the tank. Fuel consumption was catastrophic. The Tiger burned through fuel at such a rate that operational range was severely limited, and as Germany's fuel situation deteriorated in 1944 and 1945, Tigers were increasingly abandoned for lack of fuel. Production was slow and expensive. Only 347 Tiger Is were built before production ended in August 1944. Each Tiger required skilled labor and precision manufacturing that Germany could not sustain. By comparison, Soviet factories were producing hundreds of T-34s each month using semi-skilled workers and simplified production techniques. The Tiger I achieved remarkable kill ratios in combat, with estimates ranging from 5:1 to over 10:1 depending on the theater and period. But these ratios masked a deeper truth. Every Tiger destroyed represented an irreplaceable loss. Every T-34 destroyed was replaced by 5 more the following week. The Panther tank was Germany's attempt to combine Soviet design philosophy with German engineering precision. When German forces captured intact T-34s in 1941, they studied every aspect of the Soviet design: the sloped armor that deflected shells, the wide tracks that distributed weight over soft ground, the balance of firepower, protection, and mobility. The Panther, designated Panzerkampfwagen 5, incorporated these lessons. It entered service in 1943 and was immediately recognized as one of the most formidable tanks of the war. The Panther weighed 45 tons, powered by a Maybach HL-230 AST P30 Vi-12 engine, producing 700 horsepower, giving it a top speed of 46 kilometers per hour on roads. Its frontal armor was 80 mm thick, but sloped at 55 degrees, providing effective thickness equivalent to 140 mm of vertical armor. This made the Panther's front nearly immune to most Allied tank guns at combat ranges. The main armament was the 75 mm KWK 42L70 gun, a high-velocity weapon capable of penetrating 138 meters of armor at 1,000 meters. This gun could destroy any Allied tank in service at the time from ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. Allied tankers who fought against Panthers described it as the most dangerous opponent they faced, more feared even than the Tiger, because Panthers were far more numerous and better balanced in performance. Germany produced approximately 6,000 Panthers between 1943 and 1945. The Panther was designed to replace both the Panzer III and Panzer IV as Germany's standard medium tank, but the Panther suffered from catastrophic reliability problems. Rushed into service at the Battle of Kursk in July 1943, before its mechanical issues were resolved, Panthers broke down in shocking numbers. The final drive, which transmitted power to the tracks, was chronically weak and failed under the strain of the tank's weight. Engines overheated and caught fire. Fuel pumps failed. Transmissions jammed. At Kursk, more Panthers were lost to mechanical breakdown than to enemy fire. Over time, some of these problems were addressed. Later variants showed improved reliability, and experienced crews learned to operate Panthers within their mechanical limitations. But the underlying issues were never fully resolved. The Panther required constant maintenance, skilled mechanics, and spare parts that became increasingly scarce as Germany's industrial capacity was destroyed by Allied bombing. By 1944, operational readiness rates for Panther units often fell below 50%, meaning that, at any given time, more Panthers were broken than functional. The Tiger II, known as the Königstiger, or King Tiger, represented the pinnacle of German heavy tank design and the ultimate expression of the quality over quantity philosophy. Entering service in 1944, the Tiger II was the most powerful tank to see combat in World War II. It weighed nearly 70 tons, protected by armor ranging from 80 mm on the sides to 150 mm on the frontal hull and 185 mm on the frontal turret. This armor was not just thick, but also sloped, providing effective protection that no Allied tank gun in service could reliably penetrate from the front. The main armament was the 80mm KWK-43L71 gun, a weapon of devastating power capable of penetrating 185 mm of armor at 2,000 meters. This gun could destroy any Allied tank at ranges where return fire was impossible. The Tiger II combined the Tiger I's firepower with the Panther's sloped armor, creating a vehicle that was theoretically invincible in direct combat. In the few engagements where Tiger IIs were deployed effectively, they achieved kill ratios as high as 15:1. Allied tank crews who encountered Tiger IIs described them as nearly unstoppable, requiring multiple tanks, artillery, and air support to neutralize. But the Tiger II's combat effectiveness was undermined by the same problems that plagued all German heavy tanks, magnified to the point of absurdity. The Tiger II's weight exceeded the capacity of most bridges, forcing it to ford rivers or use specially reinforced crossings. Its ground pressure was so high that it struggled in soft terrain, sinking into mud that lighter tanks could cross. The Maybach HL-230P30 engine, the same engine used in the Panther, was completely inadequate for a 70-ton vehicle. Top speed was limited to 41.5 kilometers per hour on roads, but in practice, the Tiger II rarely achieved this. Off-road mobility was poor, and fuel consumption was catastrophic even by Tiger I standards. The Tiger II consumed fuel at such a rate that operational range was measured in tens of kilometers, not hundreds. As Germany's fuel supplies collapsed in late 1944 and 1945, Tiger IIs were frequently abandoned by their crews when they ran out of fuel, unable to reach combat or even retreating positions. Production of the Tiger II was painfully slow. Only 489 units were completed before the war ended, with one produced in 1943, 379 in 1944, and 112 in 1945. Each Tiger II required enormous resources and skilled labor that Germany no longer possessed. Factories were being bombed by Allied aircraft. Skilled workers were being drafted into the infantry to replace catastrophic losses on the eastern and western fronts. Raw materials were scarce. The Tiger II was a weapon too sophisticated for the collapsing industrial base that produced it. By 1944, Germany's strategic situation had become desperate. The Eastern Front had collapsed into a fighting retreat as Soviet forces pushed westward with overwhelming numerical superiority. The Western Allies had landed in Normandy and were grinding through France despite fierce German resistance. Germany's industrial capacity was being systematically destroyed by strategic bombing. Tank production continued, but output could not match losses. In Normandy, German panzer divisions deployed their remaining Tigers and Panthers in defensive operations, using the bocage terrain to ambush Allied columns. Individual tanks achieved impressive results. A single Tiger could destroy multiple Shermans before withdrawing. A well-positioned Panther could dominate a road junction for hours. But these tactical successes could not alter the strategic reality. For every Tiger destroyed, Germany could not replace it. For every Sherman destroyed, 3 more arrived the following week. The Allies could afford losses that would have been strategically crippling to Germany. On the Eastern Front, the pattern was even more pronounced. Soviet armor overwhelmed German positions through sheer mass. German crews might destroy 10 T-34s in a single engagement, but 20 more would arrive the next day. German fuel shortages became critical. Panthers and Tigers were abandoned for lack of fuel, not because they were destroyed in combat. Crews destroyed their own vehicles to prevent capture, denying the enemy intact examples, but also revealing the depth of Germany's logistical collapse. The consequences of Germany's tank production decisions became inescapable in the war's final year. Germany's 5 Deadliest tanks had achieved remarkable combat records, but their cumulative production numbered approximately 27,000 units across all variants. The Soviet Union alone produced over 80,000 T-34s. The United States built 49,134 Shermans. Britain produced thousands of Churchills, Cromwells, and other designs. Germany faced an ocean of steel that no amount of individual tank superiority could overcome. The Sturmgeschütz III, the most numerous German armored vehicle, lacked the armor and mobility to survive in offensive operations. The Panzer IV, reliable and balanced, was outclassed by late-war Allied designs. The Panther, potentially the best all-around tank of the war, was crippled by mechanical unreliability and production shortages. The Tiger the Worn, feared and deadly, was too few and too expensive. The Tiger II, the most powerful tank of World War II, was too heavy, too slow, too fuel-hungry, and too complex to be operationally effective in Germany's collapsing military situation. Each of these tanks represented the finest efforts of German engineering, the product of sophisticated design and skilled manufacturing. But wars are not won by superior individual weapons. Wars are won by the side that can produce enough weapons, maintain them in the field, supply them with fuel and ammunition, and replace losses faster than the enemy can inflict them. Germany's tank designers created machines of extraordinary capability, but Germany's strategic planners failed to recognize that capability without sustainability is a formula for defeat. The legacy of Germany's World War II tanks is complex and contradictory. In the decades after the war, the Tiger and Panther achieved legendary status, symbols of German technological prowess and martial skill. Tank enthusiasts and historians studied their specifications, debated their merits, and built them into icons of armored warfare. This legend obscured a harsher truth. Germany's focus on technologically sophisticated heavy tanks was a strategic mistake that contributed to its defeat. Resources poured into Tiger and Panther production could have produced 3 or 4 times as many Panzer IVs, more reliable and easier to maintain. The industrial capacity consumed by complex final drives and precision optics could have been redirected to producing trucks, artillery, or aircraft. The skilled workers assembling Tigers could have been manufacturing anti-tank guns or training infantry. Military historians examining the Eastern Front have calculated that if Germany had focused on mass-producing simplified Panzer IV variants instead of developing Panthers and Tigers, it could have fielded numerically superior Panzer divisions capable of more sustained operations. Soviet tank crews would still have won through attrition, but the battles would have lasted longer and cost more. The war's outcome would have remained the same, but the path to that outcome might have been bloodier. The deadliest German tanks of World War II were deadly, not because they were invincible, but because they were effective at killing enemy tanks in the moments they were operational, fueled, crewed, and positioned to fight. But those moments became rarer as the war progressed. By 1945, the sight of a Tiger II or Panther was increasingly uncommon, not because they had been destroyed, but because they had been abandoned, their crews retreating on foot, their fuel tanks empty, their spare parts exhausted. The finest tanks in the world had become monuments to strategic miscalculation, masterpieces of engineering that could not alter the mathematics of industrial warfare. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.